Let's go to Josh in New York.
Yes, hello?
How you doing, Josh?
Good. I wanted to talk about why I think you're wrong when you say the default position is non-belief.
Why I'm wrong?
Default position is non-belief.
Okay.
I think this is one of those cases where the default position is actually squarely in the middle of the two claims. Like it's claim one.
What claims are we talking about?
Okay, let me define the claims. Claim one would be there is no God of any sort, no transcendent being of any sort.
Straw man.
And claim two would be that there is a transcendent being that started everything.
Here's the problem. You're talking about two claims.
Right.
Belief necessarily addresses an individual claim, not two claims.
Right.
The default position would be to reject both of those claims until...
Okay, well what's the default position? No, the first position is the default position that there's no God. That's what you believe.
No, that's not the default position. It's not what I believe. It's not what I've ever said. And matter of fact, you can go to the ACA website, and on the lecture series, I gave a lecture that's called Belief. You can go down and actually watch it on Google. And there you'll get exact definitions of what I'm talking about. But I'll simplify it. When we talk about belief, we are always necessarily addressing a single claim, because you cannot necessarily demonstrate that you can have a single belief about multiple claims. So it's one claim. If the claim is some God exists, the default position, I claim, is not to accept that claim until it is supported. If the claim was no gods exist, the default position, I would say, is not to accept that claim until there's sufficient evidence.
But this is kind of like a semantics game, because what I'm really saying is that when somebody makes the claim that there's a God, and then your response is that the default position is to reject that claim, I think what's happening is you yourself are subtly making your own claim, even though you're not stating it. Because you're making a claim that no God exists.
No, I'm not. Actually, Josh, I will make that claim, but that's not what I'm doing when I when I reject their claim.
But I think you're not fleshing it out. But
it's not my responsibility. If somebody is asserting a claim and I say I don't accept that claim, it is not then my responsibility to flesh out what I do accept. For example, if somebody says A, I can just say not A, but I don't have to say no B, no C, no D. There are plenty of other options there. I am not asserting a position, I am responding to one.
So you don't have any position of your own?
I do.
But he's saying that's not relevant to the point about rejecting the claim until it's sufficiently supported.
On the claim of existence, X exists, the burden of proof is necessarily always on the assertion that X exists. We do not begin with the assumption...
If there's only two options, then you're automatically saying Y exists if you're saying X doesn't exist.
No, because what he was talking about before is that you could reject both claims.
So how can there not be a God and not be not a God?
No, you can simply be saying I don't believe either because there's insufficient data upon which to base a belief.
I'm not talking about a specific type of God.
I'm not either. Wait, this could be any claim. It doesn't have to be a claim about God. Any claim at all, I can say there's insufficient data upon which to base a belief, and I can.
But then if you're rejecting the claim for it and saying the claim against it, then you'd be an agnostic.
See,
because agnostic deals with knowledge, not belief.
Josh, are you listening?
Yeah.
I kid you not. Go listen to the lecture because I explain this in great detail, but I'll give you the short version right here. There are two possible truth values. God exists. God does not exist. That's it. They're mutually exclusive. Those are the two possible actual truth values. Now, we're talking about belief values. Do you believe this claim? No. Do you believe this claim? No. It's possible to not believe either, because belief is the acceptance that a claim is true. There's two different levels here. There is X is either X or not S. X is necessarily the claim. God or no God is necessarily the actual truth assessment. That's a valid dichotomy. But your belief about that situation is not limited to those two options. And because it's not limited...
I don't see another possible option.
Rejecting both claims.
Rejecting both claims is unsupported. Here.
Okay, but so then you would
No, stop. Stop, Josh. Gosh.
He's going to give you an example here.
All right.
I flipped a coin. There are only two options. Is it heads or tails?
You're asking me, or you're...
Do you believe that it's heads?
No.
Do you believe that it's tails?
No, but...
I rest my case.
I understand what you're saying, but then I wouldn't call myself an atheist. I would call myself agnostic.
The moment you say you do not accept that the God exists, that you do not accept that it's heads, you are an atheist. And whether or not you accept it's tails is irrelevant. Because
okay, but I think there's a flaw in the analogy. I really do, because the difference is that whether it's heads or tails, it has, like, you don't know that. In this case, when you're thinking about is there a God or not, if there's not a God, that there's an automatic way things have to be if there wasn't a God.
There's an automatic what?
It has to happen. With heads or tails, it doesn't matter what it is.
Okay, let me change this up because I dealt with this last night. In my hand, there's either a quarter that is heads up or there's something else.
Okay.
Tracy says that there's a quarter that's heads up and that this must necessarily be the case, and we'll just call her theist. I don't believe her, so I'm going to say I'm an atheist because I don't believe her claim.
But in this case,
I haven't said a thing about what I might think is in that hand.
And in this case, you're right, but the analogy doesn't work because in this case, if it's not heads, it's not heads. It doesn't say anything. It could be anything else. In this case, in the other case, if there's not a God, that's making a statement of its own. Because then it's saying a whole bunch of things if there's no God. It's saying that you're making claims by saying that you don't believe in a God. You're making a whole lot of claims subtly, even if you're not stating them.
No, you're not.
No, okay. From what you're saying, when you say you're making a lot of claims subtly but without stating them, for what I think you mean, I'll actually go ahead and agree with you. But that's not the point. The default position is to not accept a claim until there is sufficient evidence. For the claim, God exists, I have not seen sufficient evidence to accept the claim, and therefore I reject it. That does not mean that I also accept the claim that there are no gods, because that's another claim that has to be supported by its own evidence. And whoever is making the claim has the burden of proof. If I were to come on the show and say there are no gods, and I'm trying to convince people of that, I have the burden of proof to demonstrate that. But fortunately, much like in a court of law where either the defendant is either guilty or innocent, you vote as a jury either guilty or not guilty. And it doesn't matter if you are just unconvinced of the person's guilt or if you actually think they're innocent, you are still in the not guilty camp because there is a default assumption. The default presumption is innocence until guilt is demonstrated. And with questions of existence, the default presumption is that it doesn't exist until existence is demonstrated. Okay, so you're saying that by being an atheist, you're not making any claim at all, you're only rejecting a claim.
It's not necessary to make a claim. There are atheists who would say there's no God, but my point is, if I define an atheist as someone who does not believe a God exists, which I would assume is unobjectionable, then the moment I say, I don't believe claim A, I don't believe the coin is on heads, it doesn't matter whether I believe B or not, because I've just said I don't believe God exists. Now, I may or may not believe that there are no gods, but as soon as I say I can't accept that there is a God, even if I put yet at the end of that there's not yet supporting evidence, I could change my mind, but right now I can't accept that claim. I'm saying I don't believe your claim. I don't believe your claim that a God exists, and that makes me a non-believer. And a person who does not believe a God exists is an atheist.
The only reason there's any confusion over this at all is because this is a peculiar situation where you have people who are defining themselves with a label that is a response to something else. It's not like when the jury walks out, they say, we're the non-guiltyists. It doesn't happen. That's why there seems to be confusion over this. Now, I am one of the people who would happily tell you that my personal belief is that there are no gods. Now, I don't make this claim in the hopes of convincing anybody. I am happy to discuss why I have that, why I actually have that belief. I don't claim this belief to an absolute degree of certainty, and I'm perfectly willing to be wrong. The reason I don't mention it is because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I'm in the innocent camp. I'm in the not guilty camp. And that's the only thing that matters, because...
But the not guilty camp... Okay, all right. If you have... Use the coin example again.
Why? No. We're not using the coin example again, because the guilty, not guilty example demonstrates it better.
But what if you just... Okay, use the guilty, not guilty example. What if you reversed it and said there's no God? Then you have to be in the not guilty camp and say there's not evidence for that?
Well, what you've done is you reversed the default position. So now instead of... Are you going to let me answer? Are you going to let me answer?
He's probably going to agree with you.
You've reversed the default position to where normally we have, at least in this country, innocent until proven guilty. What you've done there is switched it to guilty until proven innocent. Now,
okay, go ahead.
Now, there's a reason why we use innocent until proven guilty, and it's because we have as a goal the goal of limiting the number of people who are falsely imprisoned by making the standards of demonstrating guilt high enough that guilt isn't assumed, that you have to prove your innocence. We limit the number of people who are falsely convicted. That is exactly the same reason why claims of existence are in the position where they need to be supported by evidence, because it limits the number of false claims of existence that we're likely to accept. It's about standards of evidence. It's the reason why scientific standards of evidence are what they are, because we care about whether or not our beliefs are true. We want to believe as many true things and as few false things, and that is the methodology, that is the default position that demonstrably produces those results. It's not arbitrary. It's not like somebody said, oh, no, we're just going to say existence is what needs to be proved instead of non-existence. And you know this yourself, almost intuitively. Do you believe in the Loch Ness Monster until somebody proves that he doesn't exist?
Right, but that's making a specific ridiculous claim. See, I can't...
Why is that a specific ridiculous claim? Because I think you're
because you're talking about a specific nature of something that isn't necessary. If the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist, that doesn't say anything. If a God as a whole
it says that it doesn't
never existed, that does say something.
No, it only says something in your particular definition of what God is. And while I don't know what it is, based on what you've said so far, I'm willing to assume that your definition of God is something that I probably find just as ridiculous, perhaps even more so, than the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot or fairies. You know why? Because I bet your God is some kind of omnipotent, all-powerful, transcendent, outside of time thing for which we have no reason to think anything like that could exist, when in fact fairies are not all that unrealistic if you get rid of the magic parts.
Okay, but I think when you were using the jury example, the disagreement here, and I can see that it's not going to be, I'm not going to bridge the gap, but I think the disagreement here is coming from the fact that you see claiming that a God exists as a claim, and you can reject that, and the default position is non-belief. And I see that if you are claiming that there's no God at all, you yourself are making a claim yourself, because you're saying everything just happened. So they're actually two claims. They're not just phrased in a way where it sounds like it's one claim, and the default position is non-belief, but it's really two claims.
No.
The specific nature of a God then would be my responsibility to prove to you.
No, Josh. No, absolutely not. You're so fractally wrong, it's not even funny. Because here's the truth.
Fractally wrong?
Yes, fractally wrong. It means you're wrong at every conceivable resolution of your claim. Here's the thing. Either God exists or it doesn't. That is a true dichotomy. What you're saying is that either a God exists and is responsible for creating the universe in exactly the manner in which we see it now, or the universe just happened by chance with no direction, blah, blah, blah. You are ignoring all other possibilities of how a universe might be explained. You are conflating two different issues: God's existence, explanation for the universe. Once again, you are taking two separate claims and conflating them, and you're fractally wrong for doing so.
Okay.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.